we've just witnessed what I think is a dramatic fact. In other words, a fact that is impossible to explain under the alternative hypothesis. In other words, the hypothesis that is not ours, right? The hypothesis that is not generated by management of realities model, by the Moore model, which is that Trump is a friend of Israel, right? That's what we consider the alternative hypothesis. That's the hypothesis that we don't like, that we think doesn't really explain the world. The hypothesis we think is the reasonable hypothesis, the one that does help us explain the world, is the one that says that Trump is an enemy of Israel, right? That Trump is promoting rather than fighting jihadism, and that Trump is closely aligned with the goals of jihadism, the most important of which is the destruction of Israel and then the destruction of the West. Now, when I started saying this, there was a lot of resistance. Of course, there still is a lot of resistance to this, partly because there's a very strong bias, that we inherit from consuming mainstream media and from our own education in mainstream academia and in our schools, because the mainstream media and our teachers and professors in the educational system are always inviting us to interpret the world according to the statements of public figures. So if Trump says that he hates Iran, the interpretation becomes Trump is an enemy of Iran. If Trump says that he's a friend of Israel, the interpretation becomes Trump is an ally of Israel, or more generally, the U.S. is an ally of Israel, right? And we believe that the public statements of public figures should never be the basis for geopolitical analysis, because politicians and other public figures don't express themselves in public in order to inform us. They express themselves in public in order to manipulate us. So in any particular communication, they may be saying the truth. That's certainly possible. But there's no reason that you should adopt the method of always assuming that they're telling you the truth. To the contrary, you should assume that most of the time they are manipulating you with some form of dishonesty. So the fact that Trump has publicly said that he's opposed to jihadism, that he's an enemy of Iran, that he doesn't want Iran to have nukes, that he's a friend of Israel, that he's, I think recently he said that the U.S. is Israel's number one ally by far, quote unquote. That's a direct quote. So those kinds of statements, in our opinion, are worthless as fundamental information with which to build a model of the geopolitical world. And before Trump became president, I began a series of articles, which I will share here for anybody who wants to take a look at them. So very briefly, this is the latest one. Trump saves the Ayatollahs. It's the one that corresponds to the title of today's live broadcast. But we have a whole series on it, on Trump. The first one, if you go to part one here, asks the question: Is Trump a real person, or is he a character created by the deep state to capture the energy of the opposition, right? Because if you're the deep state, right, what do we mean by the deep state? We mean the CIA. We mean the intelligence services of the United States, which unfortunately were granted the power by U.S. citizens, by the U.S. Congress in 1947, to spend the money of the citizens in secret. Okay, and this is the key issue. Because the intelligence services can spend the money of the citizens in secret, and it's a lot of money because there is no greater concentration of money than the U.S. Treasury. So if they are able to spend the money of U.S. citizens in secret, which is the biggest pile of money in existence, well, then they have the power to corrupt just about any institution. So our model says, well, if you're the deep state and you want to stay in power permanently, obviously the thing you have to do is to, in addition to corrupt the various institutions of democracy, so that you can run them clandestinely, right? You in a simulation of democracy, in a manipulated simulation of democracy, you also want to control the opposition. It's very important to control the opposition, because if you don't control the opposition, then one day you may be out of power, right? If the opposition becomes sufficiently popular, and the leader of the opposition is not someone you control, then if that person wins at the polls, then you're out of power. Now, of course, people in the United States who voted for Trump perceive that this is what happened when they voted Trump into office, right? When Trump became the president, the people who voted for him think that this means that there's been a kind of a revolution going on. But that's not true if Trump is really a creature of that deep state. And that's our hypothesis. So before Trump was inaugurated president, we published that first piece on our Substack, asking the question, well, is he really, is he for real? Is Trump for real? Or is he controlled opposition? Is he a character created by the deep state to become attractive, to seem like he's a real opponent of the system, so that the people who are upset with the system, who are fed up, with trans ideology, with the woke business, who are fed up with Biden's policies in the Middle East, who are fed up with the corruption of things like USAID and other elements of the deep state that are financing all kinds of questionable movements around the world and institutions and so forth. Anybody who's upset with all of that will vote for Trump if they perceive that Trump is on their side. So the idea is, from the deep state, you produce a candidate that seems independent, that is carefully crafted to seem like he's a strong enemy of the deep state. But of course, he's a member of the deep state. And then when people vote him into office, the deep state stays in power, right? When we published that piece, we defended our own hypothesis, the Machiavellian hypothesis, and we predicted that if we were right, then Trump's policies in the Middle East would not be pro-Israel; they would be pro-jihad. Okay, this is our prediction. Now, how did this prediction do? All along in our series, we have present, because it's now 6 articles long, we have been presenting the evidence that Trump has in fact been very strongly pro-jihad and very strongly anti-Israel. And there's different things we can point to. For example, he forced Israel to a ceasefire in Gaza when they were winning the war. He forced them to retrench in Lebanon when they were winning the war in Lebanon. He has a very tight alliance with the Qataris, who are the financiers of international jihadi terrorism and the sugar daddies of Hamas, along with Iran, right? So he's a big promoter of Qatar, has a very strong alliance with Qatar. Qatar is host to the U.S.'s most important military base in all of North Africa, the Middle East, and Central Asia. And these are the jihadi daddies, right? So if he's anti-jihadi, what is he doing being so closely allied with Qatar? What is he doing sending billions of dollars in weapons to Lebanon, which is controlled by Hezbollah. What is he doing arming Egypt to the teeth, Saudi Arabia to the teeth? But now we have I think the most dramatic evidence, which is Iran. Because what happened with Iran? Trump, on a previous occasion, when Israel was getting ready to attack Iran, Trump stopped them. Trump stopped Israel from attacking Iran. Now, why would he do that?
Israel was winning.
I'm sorry?
Israel was winning, and Trump stopped them.
Well, Israel had already destroyed Iran's air defenses, right, in a previous attack. So it was a sitting duck. And Israel could easily go in and destroy its nuclear infrastructure and its oil infrastructure, as Israel just demonstrated, right? So Israel was getting ready to attack, and Trump stopped them. Now, why would you stop them? I mean, if you're an opponent of jihadism, then you should be glad that Israel wants to attack Iran, because it doesn't cost you very much, right? I mean, if Israel is the one that takes the risk, and they're the ones that go and destroy Iran, and you didn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, and you didn't want jihadism to be strong, right? Well, then the best thing that could happen to you is that Israel goes and destroys Iran. Why would you stop them? But even more telling, he stopped Israel so that he could start a process of negotiations, he said, with Iran. Now, the context in which he did this is quite revealing, because Iran already had what they call breakout time at zero. In other words, it was a matter of weeks, maybe months, for Iran to assemble finally the nuclear bomb so they could drop it in Israel. So Trump says, you got 2 months, you got 60 days to sign total nuclear disarmament, or we will destroy you. That's the framework that Trump established for negotiations with Iran, which the strategic structure of that is easy to understand. I mean, if you're a jihadist and the entire meaning of your existence is the genocidal destruction of Israel, which it is, then when Trump tells you you got 60 days to sign total nuclear disarmament, well, what you're going to conclude is that you're going to try to use those 60 days to finish your bomb and drop it on Israel, because it's the last chance to do so, right? And you don't have to be a genius to understand this. Everybody in the Pentagon obviously understood that this is how the jihadis in Iran were going to process this policy. So the policy is designed to drop a nuclear bomb on Israel. Now, if there were any doubts about Trump's true orientation, and I forgot to mention something very important, which is that U.S. spies on another occasion leaked top secret intelligence about Israel's impending attack against Iran to the Iranians. That also happened. That's also consistent with our hypothesis. But as I said, what really rises to the level of a dramatic fact, in other words, a fact that is impossible under the hypothesis of Trump friendship towards Israel or alliance with Israel and enmity with jihadism and Iran, is his behavior after Israel initiated the attack. Because it really seems like the attack caught Trump unawares, right? He was blindsided by Israel's attack. And his reaction, his immediate reaction, was to try and stop the war. Why would you do that? I mean, he had given you. So let's say that we accept the presentation, right? Let's say, for the sake of argument, we accept the presentation. He said, you have 60 days and then I'm going to destroy you. Well, Israel attacked on day 61. And if Israel destroys Iran, well, they're doing a favor to Trump, right? So he no longer has to risk anything to destroy Iran. Israel is doing it for him, right? So why would he, when the 60 days are over and Israel starts attacking Iran, why would he try to stop them? He himself had said that Iran would be destroyed on day 61. So I think that his frantic reaction to stop the war is quite telling. And of course, it was very difficult for him to stop the war because everybody has to act within their own political grammar. Okay, so if you're the president of the United States, the political grammar in the United States is modern Western democracy. It's liberal democracy. So you have to pretend to be a Democrat, even if you're not. You have to work within that political grammar. Okay, you can't be you can't be, for example, defending theocratic arguments as a U.S. president, because that's not the grammar. In Iran, it's a completely different grammar. There, you would defend theocratic arguments because that's the Islamic Republic, right? And the whole point of the Islamic Republic is to defend, is to destroy what they call the Zionist entity, the state of Israel, right? That's the entire meaning of Iranian jihadism. That's the reason for existence is the destruction of Israel. So that makes it very difficult for Trump to stop the war once it starts, because after the Iranians got attacked so hard by Israel, well, the Ayatollahs have to reply. They have to reply, because if they don't reply, then all of the true believers in the jihadi structure of Iran would be outraged. Why are we not replying? And if they had surrendered like Trump wanted, then the Ayatollahs might have gotten their heads cut off, because how are you going to surrender to Satan? They think Israel is Satan, right? The whole point of their existence is to redeem the world by destroying Israel in genocide. They're not going to surrender to Israel. So Trump couldn't get them to surrender, which means he couldn't get them because of the internal political grammar of Iran. So if he couldn't get them to surrender, he couldn't protect them. Because the only way to stop Israel, for Trump, the only way to stop Israel is if Iran surrendered. While Iran is throwing missiles at Israeli cities, the political grammar of the United States made it impossible for Trump to simply impose a ceasefire on Israel, because he's supposed to be Israel's ally. So within that grammar, it would have made zero sense. Everybody would have realized that Trump was an enemy of Israel if he had ordered Israel to stop while Iran was throwing missiles at Israeli cities, right? So he tried, but he couldn't get it done. So what did he do? What did he do in order to stop Israel from destroying Iran? He entered the war. He entered the war as a co-belligerent against Iran and dropped just enough bombs so that he could take narrative control of the war, and then impose a ceasefire on Israel.
Yes.
But the structure of this is very clear. If you impose a ceasefire on Israel, on both, obviously, but if you impose a ceasefire on both, when Israel is beating the crap out of the Ayatollahs, which is what was happening, well, then you're protecting the Ayatollahs. You're saving the Ayatollahs. And amazingly, this is precisely what Trump said he was doing. In his Truth Social posts, he said that he was trying to save the Ayatollahs. He even said that he was trying to save the Iranian Empire. And this is after he threatened, this is after he promised that he would destroy them, right? So you have two different positions. You have to decide which one is true, because he said both. So On one occasion, he said, I'm going to destroy Iran. And on another occasion, he says, I want to save the Iranian empire. So which one is reality? Well, notice when Trump dropped a few bombs on Iran to take narrative control of the war, he immediately told the Iranians, don't fire back. If you fire back, I will unleash everything on you. You have never seen the kind of disaster that I'm going to bring on you, right? And he threatened them in all capital letters, like an adolescent, trying to be very scary, right? Because of course, if Iran replied with missiles against U.S. positions, then Trump would be forced either to reply, right, to protect the political grammar, to protect the whole management of that reality for American citizens, right, or he would have to hold his fire and pull his mask off. And that's what happened. Even though Iran threw some missiles at U.S. positions, Trump held his fire. He didn't fire back. Despite all his threats, he didn't fire back. And he did that so that he could impose a ceasefire. And what that means is that he's a pro-jihadi. I mean, so this is, there. In my view, there is no other interpretation that explains this, because he was under Iranian fire when he imposed the ceasefire.